For the past few months, it's been claimed that those opposing GamerGate have been subjected to untold levels of harassment and threats of violence. So I decided to take a look at the metrics. Welcome to Trigger Warning. I had a hard time finding half-decent sources for the harassment received by both those supporting the use of the GamerGate hashtag and those opposed to it. But the other night on the Kotaku in Action subreddit, I was directed by a user to two locations, both Tumblr blogs, that provide examples. One for GamerGate, and one for those opposed. So I was curious. I wanted to find out exactly what kind of examples were provided. So I decided to examine the examples provided on both blogs and work out the metrics. What percentage of the harassment were threats, what percentage was vitriol, and what percentage could be boiled down to criticism. Now, in fairness, the blog No Harassment Here, which provides examples of harassment suffered by people opposed to GamerGate, only had a grand total of 86 posts at the time I examined it, providing just over 150 individual examples of harassment. Of those, I only counted 129, excluding commentary and examples of people either discussing Zoe Quinn or addressing her directly without vitriol. As far as I understand, the blog itself only started on October 4th, so it's very likely that there do exist much more examples of harassment. So, to be fair, I only counted 129 of the most recent examples of harassment against supporters of GamerGate and worked out the metrics. I counted examples in 5 different categories. They are vitriol, in which I counted insults, sexist and racist comments, and outright accusations. Incitement to violence, in which I counted advocating violence, harm, or wishing harm or death upon someone, such as the infamous "please kill yourself" cliche. Threats and veiled threats, which deal specifically with the outright threats of personal violence or warnings to the recipient that they should expect violence towards them. Doxing, which provides examples of someone either doxing, attempting to dox, or advocating doxing of persons. And finally, criticism, which includes questioning and condescending comments. So with that said, let's get to it. First, I wanted to provide the metrics of harassment against those opposed to GamerGate. For vitriol, I counted 75 examples, tallying out to just over 58% of all examples. For incitement to violence, there were 11 examples, equaling about 8.5%. For threats, there were 6 examples, coming up to around 4.5%. For examples of doxing, there were only 2 examples I can find, or 1.5%. And for criticism, there were 25 examples, coming to about 19%. Now, for the harassment experienced by GamerGate supporters. For vitriol, I counted 71 examples, totaling 55%. For incitement to violence, there were 22 examples for 17%. For threats, there were 9 examples, coming to just shy of 7%. For doxing, I counted 15 examples for about 11.5%. And for criticism, questions, and condescending comments, there were 12 examples for 9.3%. So what does that show us? When we take the sample size into consideration, it doesn't really show us much else other than that both sides are experiencing roughly equal amounts of vitriol and insults. But it does show us that there's a clear disparity between the amounts of threats, incitements to violence, and doxing that supporters of GamerGate are experiencing, while anti-GamerGate individuals are being subjected to more criticism. Granted, this was a small sample, and there were likely many more examples of harassment on both sides that have yet to be fully documented. But one thing is clear. In my opinion, only one of these categories is valid in any discussion online, and that is to offer and accept criticism. The rest are examples of malaligned individuals who likely didn't get enough love as a child. But it does show, and I believe rather clearly, that there is a disparity in what is being told to the mainstream media and what is actually happening. So if you're one of the maladjusted few that are engaging in threats, doxing, or incitements to violence, seek help. If you feel the need to descend to insults, I think you need a hug. Find the closest teddy bear, puppy, or kitten, and get some much needed therapy. Anyways, guys, with that said, I'm going to carry on. If you liked this episode of Trigger Warning, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And feel free to share this video to show that there actually are people dealing with real struggles on the other end of all the harassment. Be good to each other and argue in good faith. Catch you next time.
We'll fight for an end to racism, to sexism, and discrimination based on sexual orientation is a cause worth fighting for. However, a social